This was supposed to be the first episode, but this is like what, our third?
Yeah.
Because
You can count.
we wanted to talk about economics, getting a job, buying a house, but we're broke and we're like neats. We have zero life experience. So here's my brother. He's a tad bit older than me, and he actually has like a family. He actually has a job, the J word, the J-O-B, get this guys. And he's looking at buying properties. He's a smart guy. He's got a good credit score.
I don't know about smart, but
He's got a good credit score, mainly because he's white.
okay.
It's
And
not because he's Brazilian.
Latino.
bro doesn't get it. Bro, we're in the inside club. If you understand that, you're in the club. He isn't, okay? So know that. But the economy kind of sucks right now. You can't get a job. And if you're wondering why can't I get a job, there's this thing called a labor surplus. And basically what that means is 30 million people from the third world came over here. And now they're doing a lot of day labor jobs. A lot of jobs that young men without college degrees would be doing because they're cheaper. Also the importation of people through H-1B visas. And they go into tech support, telecommunications, things like that. That's why whenever you have a problem with something, you go up, it's, hello, sir. Yes, I submit the ticket. Then they hang up. That's why that happens.
No, sir, we cannot report your ticket.
We cannot
do
redeem.
anything.
We cannot redeem. I want you to know, if we get in trouble for this, you're going down with us. They're going to like fire you from your job for being on this. Like, they're going to ruin your life. They're going to take your house. They're probably going to kill you. They're just going to shoot you for being on here.
What house?
In this economy, a house?
Oh,
Are you
yeah.
crazy?
Yeah, because they got so many houses for like $300K. I'm sure you've seen this,
Yeah.
that are unlivable. And then you have to invest more money in. And you have to redo the flooring, the appliances, so much BS. Can you tell us about your experience trying to buy a house?
So my experience in buying a house. How fun. So, me and my girlfriend, who are planning to be married, have been looking for a house for a couple of months now. The housing market is ridiculous. I will absolutely be the first to say that. Somewhere a house might have costed 10 years ago something to the tune of $180,000 is now going for something to the tune of $300,000+. So it is definitely making it harder for people like me who would be first home buyers to purchase said vehicle. Or let me back up here. Yes, vehicles too, but also houses. So yes,
Everything's more expensive.
everything is
It
absolutely
is,
more
and
expensive.
it's BS, right? Because like I mentioned, some of them are unlivable. So even after you buy them, you have to renovate them more, or they'll be run down. It's complete garbage.
Correct.
And also, not only that, the interest rates, they're up the rear end.
Yeah, so I think first home buyers where I live is about a 3.5% for a down payment, because interest rates and down payment rates kind of go hand in hand. You could be paying upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 a month just on mortgage for a house, and that is definitely obscene, especially for somebody who's just trying to get basics. Somebody like me, simple 3-bedroom, maybe a 2-bath, is very expensive right now.
Magic number, 3-bed, 2-bath.
Yes, that's the magic numbers. So, especially when it comes to work, which when a sale happens, you can always negotiate prices come down for the work that is needed. But what you end up running into is you have a lot of houses that are quickly renovated or quickly fixed up to be relisted on the market for 40 or 50,000 more, just for a simple fix that doesn't increase the value that much. And quite frankly, a lot of these fixes are short-term fixes, or they're fixes that do not last very long.
They're done by day laborers with questionable citizenship. They're not done by people who know what they're doing. It's the cheapest, quickest option. And we've had this too. Because we've had this too.
I'll
So
say
this-
we've
this
still
isn't a
got
unique
to
thing.
retar the roof back home.
Oh yeah.
Back where I come from, yeah. Anytime it rains, there's a leak. We know where it is.
Oh
but
yikes.
We've
Remember
been up there 3 different times.
Remember the old place I used to live at before we moved?
Mm-hmm.
the ceiling collapsed in on there when it
Really?
rained. Because remember, we talk about that. I think we did because you were over there quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that ceiling ain't gonna last. And as soon as we moved out, it collapsed. And I'm like glad we got out of
Close
there.
call.
So to kind of add on to that, to give another example, a guy that I work with was telling me some of his experiences buying houses, things to look out for. For example, you walk through a house, there's a lot of things that you're going to not notice. That's why it's always good to have a home inspector come by and inspect your house. In this certain instance, there was no home inspector when they bought their first house, and what they had come to find out is that the door frame hadn't been replaced properly, and the fact that when in conjunction with the front porch, it lowered the door frame enough that water would come in through the top of the door frame off of the porch roof and allowed it to flood the inside of the house whenever it rained. So that's just an example of an ongoing problem of quick fixes or fixes that aren't done right.
And over where he's saying this happens, hurricanes are not an uncommon thing. So it's something that it will screw you over.
Yeah, so, for example, we just had that hurricane, here on the East Coast, and that definitely affected a lot of areas that it wasn't supposed to affect. A lot of areas that haven't ever really been affected by hurricanes. So you have that in conjunction with houses that were put up questionably or not as well done, that you have a lot of housing damage that could have been prevented by doing the job right in the first place, or buying a house that the job was done in the first place, or doing it yourself.
And then availability is a nightmare because you're not only competing with other people, but then there are banks and multinational corporations. So it can be a rat race. It can almost feel impossible to buy a house and right now, but I don't think that's going to last, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret, right? You're in the club. You watch this show. You're in the club. This is the Those Who Know Club, right? And like we said in the previous episode, we have the script for what's going to happen next. We know who wins the Super Bowl this year. Not who you think it is, but basically, there's going to be a housing market crash. And this isn't a joke. This isn't me joking. Recently on Google Trends, help with mortgage was at an all-time high, even higher than in 2008. And as we mentioned, with all these other problems with properties, they're almost impossible to sell as well. The people who are also buying them can't really afford them because of interest rates. It's going to collapse, and hopefully it isn't as bad as it was in 08. Hopefully there is something that can be done to kind of soften the blow that this is going to cause. But on the bright side, for you, a young guy who doesn't really have stocks, you're watching this, you don't own stocks, you don't got a 401k, you don't
Kid yourself.
You don't work. You're in your parents' basement right now. But for a guy like you that maybe in the future will, that can open up a lot of opportunities to you. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. We're going to rent everything. You'll own nothing. Be happy. Say the lie. Say the lie.
Yum, yum, yum. You will obey the New World Order. You will eat the bugs. You will own nothing, and you will be happy.
Basically. But, so I don't think it's going to end up like that because of that. I think it's all going to kind of topple in. It's a house of cards, and we're just kind of blowing on it right now, seeing which one's going to go out first, and we're getting stronger and stronger breaths.
Place your bets.
Place your bets. Now work, we talked about work a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You got a nice job. What's your advice for anybody out there who wants a job?
My advice would be, first off, connections. Having a lot of connections, knowing people who have jobs.
He's Jewish, by the way.
Unfounded, but yes.
I think the connections part ties in.
If that was the case, I'd probably not be doing this. So, that being said, a lot of things is connecting. So, having connections to those who work good jobs, being able to say, hey, these are the skills that I have to perform said job, being able to get in the front door on behalf of other people who work at this place, is indeed helpful. It's part of the reason I got the job that I have now. And it's it's definitely some money not to sneeze at, but it's also, with the cost of living, I would say it's a normal job. It pays the normal amount for cost of living. And that being said, another thing that helps you get a job is stay with it. You have a lot of people who get a job, they decide, I'm not going to go in today, or I've got more important things to do, or for whatever reason they decide to muck it up at their place of work. Don't do that, because that is how you quickly find yourself back at your starting position of no job. That would be my kind of helpful tips for getting said job.
There are a lot of, so like loyalty to the company, what's your perspective on that? There are a lot of people that were loyal to their companies and they got rewarded not in getting stock options or payoffs or anything like that, or promotions or raises, but they're rewarded with being laid off.
So, not to go too in depth on my place of work for, discretional reasons, my job does not like to lay people off, but they do have ways of making sure that they don't have too many people working if they don't need too many people working. So my advice to that is, when you're in a job, make yourself more valuable. A lot of the people who get laid off or get fired or find themselves without a job are people who have been doing the same exact thing, not having any ambitions to grow within their job, who don't provide any other significant skill set than the job that they are in, because a lot of big companies and a lot of mid-sized companies, you are very easily replaceable. There is 50,000 people that could do your exact job. So if you distance yourself as far as you can from those 50,000 people, the better off you are going to be at staying at this company. Companies more from a company perspective. If I'm a company owner and you are working for me and I have another guy over here and you are working for me and you can do 3 separate jobs. You don't perform them all at the same time, but if I ask you to go do this job or that job, you can perform this job or that job, as well as the job you're currently in, versus Joe Smo over here, who I asked to do these other 2 jobs and they cannot perform these jobs, or refuse to take these jobs, and they would rather stay in the position that they are in for 10 plus years. Combine those, if I have to get rid of one of these people, who am I going to keep? Am I going to keep the guy who can only do one job, or the guy that I can move around when I need him to?
How would you say to get these skills? How do you, because you say you got to be skilled, you got to be valuable. How do you make yourself more valuable in the workplace?
So what that tends to look for is eagerness, asking questions. For me in my job, if I see somebody doing another job, I ask them questions about their job. How are you doing your job? Is there some part of your job that I can be doing to make my job easier, or that I can be doing to learn your job? And being able to have that eagerness and willingness will allow who's above you to be able to see. And I will say this, there are a lot of time bosses, not particularly good ones, won't pay attention to this. But on the flip side of that, you will also have bosses that pay attention to a lot more than you think they are. And so it is always good to err on the side of caution and say, if my boss is watching me right now, this is something that he would write over in the pro side of the pro-cons list. And being able to pick up those skill sets from other people doing their jobs allows you to attain those skills to say, hey, I know how that person does their job. Say that there's an opening in that job, then you can say, okay, there's an opening, I've looked at how they can do their job. There may be other prerequisites such as tests, or you have to pass some kind of training, or so be it. But after getting over that hurdle, being able to obtain that job adds you on 2 skill sets. Now you can do the job that you currently were in, and now you can do the job that you were in. And there you go. You have 2 separate job positions that you have performed to the best of your ability.
That's some good advice. It used to be that it wasn't you and 50K could do stuff. It used to be you and like 10K. And the reason that is again, we go to the labor surplus of using immigration, both legal and illegal, how they bring a ton of like low-skilled people over here to perform these tasks because they can undercut them. So that's more valuable than ever. And if you can stand out, you can do that. And just be a good person. Most of your competition is going to be like fentanyl drug addicts, like guys who don't get out of their bedroom. They like kind of losers.
Speaking from personal experience, can confirm.
Yeah, because we went to the same high school. And oh my goodness, I'm like, you know, I'd have teachers be like, I can't believe, you know, this generation, what's going on. I'm like, I ain't scared. If these guys are my competition, I'm wiping the floor with them. I'm sorry. Like, these guys are done with. You can actually go out there, you can do stuff, you can listen, you're willing to do stuff, no matter how simple it is, a lot of people won't. And if you're actually willing to listen, go out, do stuff, and be a decent person, you could probably get far.
So, something to add on to what Casey said here is that your competition, right? So, I can't speak for every place of work. I could just speak of my place of work. But my place of work did have an entrance exam at one point where before you got hired on, you did have to take a qualifying test to be hired at my place of work. That is no longer the case. So now when you go to apply for my place of work, you no longer have to take that qualifying test. And as a result of the difference between having the test and not having the test, you have a quality of work that goes down from that, because a test weeds out a lot of the characters that otherwise you wouldn't want in your place of work, right? So let's say I have a test and somebody can't complete the test, and that test is on skills and tasks that I would need this person to perform. I already know if they cannot pass this test, they cannot perform to the level that I would need them to, or to the task that I need them to. Whereas you don't have that test, then you get anybody that comes in, you have to find out in 6 months whether or not they are a viable asset to the company, or you just wasted a hire on somebody who inevitably is going to be fired rather quickly or let go rather quickly due to their actions from attendance or behavioral or any number of things.
Yeah, and you actually manufacture a commercial product. Again, I'm not going too in depth, but that is a silly Billy idea, because that does screw over the consumer in the end. Because at the end of the day, that sabotages and lessens the quality of the product that is being produced. Now, a guy like you, you know, you're good at it, but these people that aren't tested, this guy who, high school dropout, no GED, he's got a couple records.
Okay.
I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about this.
Say, I did at least pass high school.
I'm talking about this hypothetical loser guy that
Yes.
isn't tested.
And for further clarification, I was not one of the ones who had to pass the test. Of course, this doesn't say that, you know, you don't get any employees by not having this test. Because
it's just,
of course you do
that
get them.
net. You have a net, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And now the net is gone, and anything is coming in. There's no filter. There is a filter. You have removed it, and what you're getting is not pure. It's not good.
Yeah, you're getting the gems with the trash.
Yeah, that,
Getting the gems with the coal.
CJ put it well. You're getting gems with the trash, and obviously, you know, that affects work-life quality as well as work quality. And from a standpoint, it's not very hard to keep a good job. It is not very hard to keep a job. You know, where I work, we have a saying that it's easier, or it's harder to get fired than it is to stay there, just because the qualifications for you to get fired, the bar is set, you know, to a point that you have to be really messing things up to get fired. But people still get fired. And so having nets like that, or having trusted ways of verifying, not to get into in depth, we have one lady that works with us. She ended up messing up a whole line of product, right? She did it not once, but she did it twice, and after both times, she was fired. And
Yikes.
not to say whether this has any bearing on if or if not color is in effect in that, but color is the fact of the matter is she was of color. And so having her fired and brought back, and then the next person fired and brought back, you know, you kind of really get a inkling on how things are done in certain places with that in mind.
Yeah, there are people that do that if they are fired and they might be in a protected class, they will take advantage of that in a lawsuit, because those are lawsuits regarding that civil rights lawsuits. If you're a protected class, you're being discriminated
That's
against.
big money for a lawyer.
No, and a client too. My goodness, the payout is insane, and they can use that almost as like a hostage negotiation. Like it's blackmail. It's legal blackmail.
Now, something to also conclude: there are some
We're not
states-
saying it's bad. We're not saying that the Civil Rights Act
No.
is bad. God forbid.
No.
No.
We're
Oh,
saying
one
that
person
bad
should
actors abuse it. We're saying bad actors abuse it. That's what we're saying.
Correct. And so something to also keep in mind is a lot of states are right-to-work states, which means that an employer can fire you for any reason at all, and they don't always have to give you a reason for you being fired. So in a lot of cases, in places like that, you know, you also have unions in certain institutions. So you have a lot of variability when it comes to how to keep your job, or how it comes to being a protected person in your job. And those are also things to keep in mind when it comes to being an employee. Excuse me. And how it comes to other people. They may have advantages that you don't. That happens in schooling systems as well. That happens in
That's life. Life is
institutions as
unfair.
well. Correct. But these are all things that can weigh with you or weigh against you, and it's always good to be knowledgeable on those options that could weigh against you or weigh with you.
Yeah, that was good.
Pretty
Hypothetical scenario. You have a boss you like. Your other employees, your fellow coworkers don't like them. Who do you pick?
So help me understand this. You're saying, do I pick my boss or my fellow employees?
Yeah, who should you pick if you're put in that scenario? Because that kind of goes along with kind of union things.
So that's a really good question.
And
So
right
it
to work.
really depends on how well is your boss treating you. And in my case, you know, I'm not going to say in my case, but in an example, if you have a boss that is performing poorly and the rest of your fellow coworkers recognize that your boss is performing poorly, there more often than not are tests, or not tests, but more like surveys that are anonymous, that you can say, hey, my boss is doing an excellent job, my boss is not doing an excellent job. So there are ways that can be recognized while you're able to not have a union or not have anything like that, and also be able to say, hey, we need this thing to change, we need to be able to have this to change, while also staying with your fellow coworkers about it. My position is that, you know, you have bills to pay, mouths to feed, and you weigh the situation at hand. I mean, of course, if your boss is being, for lack of a better word, jackass, then there are actions that you can take that don't necessarily put your job at risk. You know, don't fight the guy. You know, don't throw him through a window, as we all like to think that we would want to do, right?
Oh, it's
But,
tempting.
yeah,
I'm
it is-
not-
it is
no,
very
it's
tempting. But
Some guys will do that. You know, you got Barry. He's been working there 50 years. They fire him. He shows up next day. He's got an AR-15 and a bad attitude. That's a bad scenario.
yeah, that happens as well. So there are proper channels and ways of doing that without disrespecting your coworkers and without siding with your boss over your coworkers. Of course, you do have a job. You do get paid for that job.
And your
if
boss
you're
is the one
doing
who
your
pays
job,
you.
correct. And so
Remember
what
that
you
too.
what you have to weigh out is who is actually right in that situation. You know, if your boss is actually right and your other coworkers are wrong in that situation, then yeah, I would absolutely say you kind of need to side with your boss on that one, because they are making the point that this is what should be happening or what needs to be happening, and it's not. And your coworkers are bringing that team down by going against and bucking the boss just because they may not like them, they may not agree with them on everything. But the other side of that can happen. Your boss could absolutely be in the wrong and your fellow coworkers be right, And in that case, there are proper channels to deal with that situation rather than bringing an AR-15 or throwing them out a window.
Socially at work, I hear people say the best advice socially at work would be to treat it like it's Fallout New Vegas. You stay neutral, you don't side with anybody, you kind of play both sides. Treat it like it's Fallout, like an RPG. Would you do that, like socially at work?
Again, it depends on the situations, and I can't give exact situations, but it honestly all comes down to, you can stay as neutral as you want, but at certain times you have to pick a side, or else you are just going to be told by everybody, your coworkers and your boss, what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and you just have to take it because you have set yourself up that I'm not going to take sides. You could risk ridicule from your coworkers that, hey, why aren't you siding with us? Why aren't you agreeing with us that our boss is doing such and such? Or your boss is going to come to you directly and say, what do you think about this situation? Do you agree with me or do you not? And do you agree with your coworkers or do you not? So it's really hard to remain neutral in situations like that. At least when it comes to my job and my situation, it is. Because more often than not, there is a right and there is a wrong in the situation. And at the end of the day, you may not like it, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. For example, if you get placed, so there's something called a managerial placement, where you get placed in another job. You may not like that, but that is what the company needs of you to do. And that is the right thing for them to do instead of firing you or getting rid of you. And that is a preferable alternative to being fired, to being let go, is still keeping your job. It's just not the job that you had.
What if you absolutely hate that job you're being placed into? Would you resign? Like, if they placed you into placement and they're like, all right, your job is to jerk off horses all day. Okay. Would you quit? Or would you thug it out?
It depends on how much money I'm getting paid to thug it out. If I'm getting paid a lot of money, it's a pay increase, right? If it's a pay increase, then absolutely I would try and make myself work. But some of the key things to keep in mind when it comes to a job, you can try and find a job that you absolutely love, and there are jobs out there that you would absolutely love. That is one part of it. Do you like this job? Do you not like this job? If you like this job, that's great. If you don't like this job, that sucks, and it's manageable, but keep in mind that affects work life, right?
Yeah, so find a job that you don't absolutely hate, but you can kind of like tolerate it at least.
Correct. So that you're not miserable all the time.
Yeah.
Another
if you work
thing,
a job you don't like, you got to keep this in mind. You'll never get above your boss. Like, if you keep working at that same position, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you'll never be above your boss. Your boss will always be above you, and you can make as much money in the world. All that money is just going to cushion how much you hate your job.
Correct. So that is a very good way of putting it. So that was going to lead me into my next is money. For example, my girlfriend, she hates her job so much, but she cannot move from her job because of money implications. No other job's going to be paying this amount, and she finds herself in a situation where she has become reliant on that money, so much so that even if she wanted to leave her job, she wouldn't be able to make bills. She wouldn't be able to make payments on things that she needs to make payments on. So you have to keep that in mind when going into a job, that if I don't like this job, then I need to make sure that I have backup plans. I have money saved up that I could live off of until I switch jobs, because nobody wants to work at a job that they hate, and it also makes you miserable, and it makes you less effective as an employee, which then would lead to you getting fired and put back in square number one, where you're without money that you would need to otherwise be relying on. So those are the key two things that you need to have mindsets for when going into a job.
So hopefully you're in a situation where you don't have to pick a job that you absolutely hate and become reliant on it. Hopefully you're not in that scenario. You can try and avoid it. Sometimes you can't.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's just life. But hopefully if you can, I guess try to avoid that.
Yeah. So, another thing to note is we all have to do jobs we don't like sometimes. I don't like taking out the trash. It's a job. It's a chore. I don't like taking out the trash, but in order to have a clean house, you have to take out trash. Sometimes to get to a place that you're comfortable and okay with, you have to crawl through the trash to get to that. Sometimes you have to take jobs that you don't necessarily like. I worked at Little Caesars starting out. That was my first job. I absolutely hated it. I worked every job within that place. Every little area, every little station, I worked it. I hated doing dishes. I loved cooking pizzas. But overall, I hated working there, and I worked for minimum wage. But I had to get that job experience to be able to move into where I am now. I had to have that job experience to say I worked at this company for this amount of time to be able to get to where I am now. So now I am in a better position. My job is not the end-all be-all greatness. You know, I don't come home every day like, yes, I'm ready to go to work the next day. No. But I don't go home and say, I hate my life. I wish I never had this job. And that's the difference that you have to have. And that's also the mindset you have to have.
Sometimes you just gotta swallow your lumps.
Yes. Yes.
All right. We have hit the time. Thank you. This has been probably like our best episode so far. Genuinely, you came on. You did a lot better than I was expecting you to do. You gave really I don't mean to insult you, but you gave a lot of really good, valuable knowledge that I think is really cool. You know, if there's anything you need, like I said, just call me, man. But thank you. I will definitely have to get you back on somewhere. In fact, this video was so good. The president just called me, and he said that this is going to be played in classrooms.
This will be played in all the classrooms
across the country.
The best classrooms.
Only
Only
the
the
best.
best.
Nobody does it better than
in the
these
honors,
guys.
in the top G classes, the Alpha, Sigma classes, the honors, the AP, all that stuff. Even the special classes, they're going to play this video to prepare the ballas of tomorrow. But it's been the fifth ward. See ya.